Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. That's right, it's Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. At least that's when we're going live here. You may be watching in a different time zone or a different day or time, whatever, but that's usually when we plan these episodes on a Sunday morning after you've had your breakfast. Maybe you're sipping your coffee or tea and just chilling out, watching a little TV or whatnot. Well, how about watch a little show where we talk about a band's catalog. We rank them as we like them. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's all about talking about these bands. And in many cases, we're talking about bands that maybe you haven't discovered yet, right? So today we're going to take a look at a progressive rock band, a trio for the most part, that had a brief little window where they were active as a band, and then that was it for them. A Dutch band. The band is called Trace. And their first album came out in 1974. By the time they released their third album in 1976, that would be it for them. And the band comprised of the leader of the band. The main reason to pay attention to this band is a guy named Rick Van Der Linden, keyboard player. Man, this guy is good. This guy is a serious player. The music of this band, for the most part, is all instrumental, classical-inspired, symphonic, progressive rock. If you love Emerson, Lake and Palmer, if you love the other prog band from the same time period called Triumvirate, right, the German band, if you like that kind of like keyboard-led power trio, keyboards, bass, and drums, you're going to love these guys. Over-the-top keyboards. Hammond, organ, Orama, like you've likely never heard before. But he also plays lots of other keyboards, right? There's plenty of ARP synthesizer, ARP synthesizer. There's lots of Mellotron. There's some electric pianos, lots of harpsichord on these albums. There's acoustic piano, right? All sorts of stuff. But the Hammond organ was his main thing. There's Hammond organ all over these three albums. Also featured in the band, first album, the first lineup, is Rick Van Der Linden on keyboards. You got Jaap van Eyck on bass and a little bit of guitar, mostly bass. You don't hear much guitar in this music at all. Pierre Van Der Linden on drums. For the second album, you've got basically Rick and Jaap also still in the band. Pierre's gone from drums. Joining is Ian Mosley on drums and percussion. Yes, that Ian Mosley, who would later join Marillion and still drummer in Marillion all these years later. By the third album, basically Ian and Jaap had dropped out. You basically got Rick Van Der Linden and a whole cast of folks. Cor Dekker on bass, Peter DeLue on drums. You got Dick Ramelink on saxes and flutes. Hans Jacobs on more keyboards. Hetty Smit on some vocals. And Harry Schaefer also on like vocals and narrations and things. So 3 albums. I'm going to rank them as I like them. All 3 are really good and worth your time, without question. But there's subtle differences in each one that you'll see as we go through the ranking. So let's get started here. I'm going to start off with my number 3 is going to be their third and final album from 1976. This is it right here, The White Ladies. All right, there's Rick on the back, right, as you can see. Star of the show. Like I said, little expanded lineup on this particular one. It's their last album. Lots of shorter tracks as opposed to the first 2 albums, which have like longer tracks and some shorter pieces. This is mostly shorter tracks. You got some vocals in spots. Still very inspired by classical music, right? But all these little tracks that just kind of bridge to the next. It kind of almost comes across like one big long song, right? Think like maybe like, but split up into tracks. Kind of think like Camel's The Snow Goose. Doesn't sound like that at all, but the approach to the music is very similar. It's like this long symphony type of thing. You got the opening tracks, Legend Part 1, and then Interlude. Quite lovely stuff. You got the simmering Hammond organ, majestic harpsichord. That leads into Confrontation, which is more of a vocal piece. Probably could have left the vocals out. They don't really add anything to the music, to be honest with you. There's not enough of them to really matter all that much. But it's a nice track. It's drenched in organ. Again, more harpsichord. There's a lot of harpsichord on these albums. You got flute, which shows up on Interlude 2. There you got the ARP synthesizer coming in. And that carries over into Dance of the White Ladies, which is really cool. Then you got a song called Doubts, which to me sounds like Procol Harum. especially the way the simmering organ and the kind of the majesticness of it. And like I said, most of this album, most of these tracks just kind of segue into the next. You got Witch's Dance, a lot of fun, kind of funky. It's got clavinet. There's clavinet on a good chunk of especially the second and third albums. If you like the clavinet sound, give it that little funky element to it. You'll like that. So you got clavinet and ARP synth on this one. You got Surrender, which just has these soaring melodies, really, really good. And then by the time you get to Interlude 4, things are getting very, very orchestral. You got the Rescue, which comes up. That's kind of super funky, but then it throws in these little classical bits. Trace 2, Hammond organ roaring back to life. And then there's some really great sax on Back Home, which joins up with the eventual return of the harpsichord on the album. And then you got Conclusion, ends the album. It's got majestic Hammond, more harpsichord. It's a really fun album. Like I said, you have to kind of dig classical music mixed with the kind of rock elements and a little bit of funk elements. It's very different stuff. While a lot of their music obviously owes a lot to ELP, they do enough of their own thing to kind of make this really, really interesting. So it's funny, this is my number 3, but it's still a really, really good album, and I could see people even liking this one the most, because it's definitely got more of that kind of like symphonic classical type of thing going on. Really, really good stuff. Keyboards are absolutely over the top great. You know, I'm like splitting hairs on the second and first album, because to me, I like them both equally. Really, really hard to, I was going back and forth. Do I put this one at 1? Do I put this one at 2? Ultimately, I decided to go with Birds, their second album, in my number 2 slot from 1975. Again, like I mentioned, Ian Mosley joins up on drums. The formula has not changed all that much from the first album. It's still a blend of kind of classical music and big bombastic symphonic prog rock. Totally heavy on the keyboards, especially the Hammond organ. The Hammond on the first 2 albums, much, much more prominent. There's like a more of a blending of different keyboard instruments on the third album, but man, Hammond all over the place. But also lots of clavinet, lots of harpsichord, lots of this, maybe not as much mellotron as on the first album, but you get a little mixing of everything. But man, Hammond organ fans, you'll love this. So you got Bourrée, Completely Cooks opens up the album, great stuff. Snuff is another really cool piece, which has some nice, really cool piano from Rick, and then some lead bass from Jop. Really good bass player. Unfortunately, he's kind of overshadowed by the keyboards, but you know. And Ian Mosley drumming up a storm on this album. You know, this is obviously him doing much, much busier stuff than what he does with Marillion. So if you want to hear like Ian Mosley, very young and totally unleashed, this is the album you want to check out. And again, there's some funk elements on this album, and actually on all 3 of these albums, but specifically on this one. Janny and a Mist, shorter piano number. Opus 1064, it's got piano and ARP synth once again. Again, lots of groove, slight funky feel. You got a guest star on this album, Darrell Way from Curved Air. Shows up on violin on that particular track, which is really, really cool. It almost would have been cool to hear more on this album, right? Especially since there's no real guitar on these albums. Having the violin there is really, really cool. You got Penny, that's kind of mellow, jazzy piano piece. Kind of a departure for them. They don't really do much of the jazzy stuff here. Then you got the big epic, which is called King Bird. And it's like 22 minutes long. Reminds me a lot of the other Dutch band Focus, quite a bit. Think of like their song Eruption, right? The way kind of all the different parts together. But here, obviously more of a classical influence. There's lots of different elements, you know, from, you know, Johann Sebastian Bach. If you're a Bach fan, you like that stuff, you'll get lots of those elements on this album, and specifically on this tune. A lot of Hammond organ solos, which are just amazing. You get some funky electric piano in spots. The drumming from Mosley is great. You get a little bit of vocals from Jop on this particular track. Again, are they really needed? It's about halfway through the song. They're not particularly great. They're fleeting. I wouldn't have bothered. That's always my thing. But to me, Rick is the absolute star of this song. And this lengthy piece is an absolute tour de force for him, using every keyboard that he's got in his arsenal. Like I mentioned, there's the nods to Bach everywhere you look. But the way he goes back and forth on the keyboards, between different keyboards, is just absolutely astounding. So good. It's just literally, it's breathtaking. Like I said, it's a toss-up between this and the debut for number 1. I'm going to put that at number 2 today. I could change my mind tomorrow. But I'm going to go with their self-titled debut, Trace, from 1974 as the number 1. There they are. This was the the Musea reissue of this. I've had this for ages. I didn't mention, but their first 2 albums were on Sire and Philips Records, and then their final album was on RCA Records. So they were signed to major labels. So here on the debut, all instrumental, like I said, classical inspired symphonic progressive rock. If you're a fan of ELP and Triumvirate, the Nice, you'll love this. Just no vocals on this. Gallarde opens up. It's like a 13-minute epic that opens up the album. Absolute pure bombast. Hammond organ, mellotron, lead bass, nimble drumming. It's mind-blowing. Just mind-blowing. Really good. I mean, Van Der Linden is a monster player, and his Hammond organ tone is just ferocious. So good. Death of Ace, a little more atmospheric, nice use of mellotron and synths. Hammond comes back into play. Really good. You got the Escape of the Piper, which is a little bit more of a quirky ELP-style fun track, right? A little bit different for them. A little rolling piano, ARP synth stabbing in and out of the mix, mellotron, kind of like military-style drumming. Cool track. Once is more rockin' Hammond organ love. Totally dig that. Drums acrobatic. Progression has a kind of like a whimsical kind of flair to it, but the Hammond organ is just absolutely roaring like a rampaging rhino. You got synths on there. Cool 12-minute epic, really good. Like I said, I hadn't listened to these albums in a long time, and I had forgotten how great these are for like a Hammond organ lover. I mean, really, these are like unsung Hammond organ albums for those who really dig that sort of thing. A Memory features more of the ARP synth. It's very melodic, atmospheric. Then at the end of the album, you got a Pierre Van Der Linden drum solo, some cool church organ from Rick with Final Trace. Overall, lots of bombast, and an amazing keyboard player that nobody ever talks about. This guy should have been an absolute star. Like I said, this is a must-have album for fans of Hammond organ, but yeah, on all of these, you got lots of mellotron, you got lots of harpsichord, you got clavinet, acoustic piano, electric piano, and more. You really can't go wrong with any of these. All 3 of these are Musea reissues. If you can go out and grab them, I would say get all 3 of them because they're really good. Really good. There's not a stinker here whatsoever, and I can see anybody ranking any of these as their number 1. They're that good. Personally, I'm going to go with the order that they were released from 1, 2, and 3. But I could easily change my mind. So as you can see, if you look at the track list and the lengths, the third album, it's kind of like the Snow Goose, right, from Camel. It's like all these short little tracks and interludes make it up almost like one big long piece of music. Very cool stuff. But man, yeah, the stuff on these, mind-blowing. So yeah, that's my ranking of the band Trace. If you are already a fan of the band, rank them as you like them down in the comments below. If you've never heard them, go out and listen to these albums. If you're a prog fan and you love Hammond organ and loads of keyboards and very classical inspired music, you have come to the right place. Maybe not the most original band on the planet, but what they do amazingly well. I would safely say all 3 of these albums easily are a 4 out of 5 and higher. Right, so maybe the third album is a 4, and 1 and 2 are like 4.5 out of 5. They're amazing stuff. And for what they are, they're really good. One of the great keyboard players of this era, who should have been an absolute star on the instrument. So, anyway, that's my ranking. This is on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together. All the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts, and please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, our merch page, our Cameo page, and the Sea of Tranquility membership options all below. And we'll see you next week here for another one. So, as I announced on the video talking about 2025 and expectations and programming changes and tweaks and things like that, you are probably going to see ranking the album shows over the course of the year from time to time that don't necessarily include me, right? I have given the crew that participate in this channel the option, if they want to record ranking shows for bands that I have never tackled, and maybe I'm not well versed in to do a ranking the album show, we're going to plug those in here just like do any other one. I've got other ones that I'm going to be working on with specific individuals, like George Lamy and I are talking about doing Psychotic Waltz and Caligula's Horse. George is talking to Rob Lasante about doing some prog metal ranking shows. Grant Arthur and I have plans to do the Little River Band fairly soon. We've also talked about doing Black Oak, Arkansas, Earth, Wind and Fire, Simon and Garfunkel, and some other things. I want to do the Tremonti catalog as well. I've just been waiting because they got a new album coming out like this month or next month, right? So I'm kind of waiting on that. I'm going to be doing the solo albums of Phil Collins. I'm going to be doing the great Norwegian heavy metal / doom band SOG. There's a whole list of ranking shows that are going to be coming up. I'm going to be doing, I think, with John Gaffney and Rich Catino, going to be ranking the albums of the great American heavy metal band Omen. I'm going to be doing Great White. There's all sorts of stuff in the works. A lot of ranking shows to do. Like I said, I won't necessarily be participating in all of them, but I'm going to be on a good chunk of them. So you guys will be getting your steady ranking shows week in and week out on Sundays, as always. Lots to come. So stay tuned. I'm going to be doing T-Rex at some point. I got that on tap as well. Also, for those of you who like more obscure stuff, I'm going to be ranking the albums of Toad. Remember Toad? Very cool bluesy heavy rock band from the 70s. I've got they've a company that sent me their whole catalog, has reissued their whole catalog recently. I've been sitting on them for a while. There's just always so much to do. They have reissued the entire catalog of Toad and the UK prog band England, and I'm going to be doing some ranking shows on both of those and featuring these new reissues. So that's all coming in the weeks and months ahead, and a lot more. So stay tuned for that. A lot of people keep asking for Devin Townsend too. I'm going to try and get to Devin Townsend this year as well. Maybe I could pull Nick Franco in for that. And lots of stuff coming. We should have some. I think we're going to be doing maybe Autopsy and Incantation album rankings this year as well, like over the next couple months. So for you death metal fans, look forward to that. And lots of stuff, and so little time. But we'll get to it. Going to do Haunt for all you fans of like the new wave of traditional heavy metal. Striker. A lot of stuff in the works. So stay tuned for all of it and more. I'm Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.